This is a prime example. This this original wooden box from Ron Ackers. When I first told a young gentleman about this box, he said, "Oh, you haven't got it." I said, "Well, I have got it. I can actually show you it or show you a photograph." He says, "No, you haven't got it." I said, "Well, I have." He says, "No, you haven't." So what on earth makes you say that I haven't got it? He says, "Because Ron Ackers never had a wooden travelling box." He says, "I pushed him round in his wheelchair for the last 7 years of his life, and he never had one." I said, "Well, in fact," I said, "this is the guy, he got it off, who was, he actually trained to tattoo." And he came in one day and he said, "Oh, I've got this thing for you." And he gave him a wooden box. And he says, "Oh my God," he says, "Well, Ron Ackers never used to give anything away for nothing." And so he nearly had a heart attack. And he said he'd sell his grandmother. And so he's thrown this wooden box in his attic for 15 years. And I had a guy come in yesterday and he says to me, he says, "Oh my God." He says, "Before I was a tattoo artist and I went to Dunstable, I seen Mr. Ackers working with this travelling case before he was actually tattooing," which just authenticates that Ron Ackers used to work with this in Dunstable. So, and I think when you take a look around the exhibition, there's some, I think, wonderful stories that put smiles on people's faces. And this is what it's all about. Because I think Charlie Chaplin said, "Without a smile a day is a wasted day." But we got some fabulous, fabulous, fabulous items. So when I was based in Germany, and what I'm doing is I'm actually networking at the moment through through the English tattoo artists. I'd heard a lot of names, but not a lot of, met a lot of people. We actually put an advert in this German book that was produced by the German Tattoo magazine. And because we was a major wholesaler, we got 50 copies to sell. Now, when it arrived, a third of it was adverts, and I thought, this is pretty boring. Well, come on, they're all customers of mine. Let's get everybody to sign or write something in there. And you say to a tattoo artist, "Write something in the book," and they go, "Oh, well, I don't really know what to write," and they have an artistic blank, so do a doodle. So they were doodling in this book, and it'd been 5 years of my life, twice around the world, and everybody was saying this book belongs in a museum. Incredible. And sadly, I had my house broken into, and the book was stolen with some of the artifacts, and I've been putting a museum collection together. I've tracked down the second copy, and as you can see, all the adverts. There's a lot of adverts, but there's also some very, very, very nice stuff. And what has happened since the first book is there's many things that have happened. There's somebody who's actually put 2 things in. There's somebody who's put something in who sadly just passed away only a couple of weeks ago after his 90th birthday. Mr. Hoffman put something in with a stencil. We have somebody who's been told where to draw. Mr. Shercliffe's been told what to draw. Page 111 is a rather nice piece because every single person except for one is a tattoo artist or has tattooed. And we have a freehand Spider-Man, age 10, already tattooing. We have the guy on the next page is the apprentice from the stepson of Ernie Carafa. And this is part of what pushed me to put the collection together, because we just thought if it needed doing properly. And so we've been collecting now for 20 years. Anything we can find, anything interesting, and of course anything that puts a smile on somebody's face. Talking about smiles, if we go over to this cabinet here, our first plinth, there's some rather nice looking instruments dating back to the very early 1900s. But what is rather special is the George Birchett card. Now, I think one of the most frequently asked, hated questions to the tattoo artist is, what does a tattoo cost? One of the frequently most asked questions from your tattoo artist to a customer is, "Oh, is this your first tattoo?" And I was in a studio and the artist had an elderly gentleman come in. And this gentleman, he says to him, "Oh, is this your first tattoo?" And he says, "Oh, no, mate, no. He says, "I had one ages ago." He says, "Well, who did it?" He says, "I'll tell you who did it." He says, I've got his business card in my wallet. And he pulls his wallet out and he goes, it's been in there for 50 years. He says, pardon, 15 years? He says, no, you heard right the first time, 50. And he pulls out a card from George Birchett, which is, I think, incredible, because most people can't even keep a wallet for 3 years, never mind a wallet with a card for 50. So, once again, stories everywhere. An incredible part of maritime history that I think it could be our last chance to actually go around and save. And this is what I'm doing. I believe I'm a collector of stories, not just artifacts. And one day we're looking to have, maybe in the UK, a dedicated tattooing museum. So plinth number 2, oh, lovely. We're going over on to now the history of the Japanese Tattoo Association, the Tattoo Club of Japan. And they used to do a lot of travelling over and meeting up with the UK, with the Great Britain Tattoo Club. And one year it was, the apprentice had a couple of hand tools, and he'd said to the apprentice, oh, let's have your hand tools for my collection. And he says, no, he says, I'm only apprentice, I couldn't dare give these away, because of being apprentice, if I give these away, I've got one of my fingers. Hey, oh, don't be silly, he says, let's have your hand tools. He says, no, I've got to take my fingers off. He says, no. He says, come on, we won't tell anybody where we got it from. So he's actually been able to get a pair of hand tools from an apprentice, but we can't give you the name because he'd be running around with no fingers. So anyway, so in this next case we have quite some rare machines made from aluminium, enamelled, from ultra tattooing. The problem being that they were so bad that people used to throw them against the wall and they would disintegrate, so they're quite difficult to find. The clockwork machine in the middle is from Russia, from White Russia. You can see a couple of Percy Waters. Well, this is a very interesting machine just here on the front. This young gentleman at the tender age of 12 actually ran away from home, and he ended up on the whaling ships tattooing the sailors in the 1940s. Ole Hansen, or what's left of it, this is an Ole Hansen design, where the cable would actually come down inside the grip and you touch your cable onto the end of your tip. So every 45 minutes to about an hour, it would give you a good whack just to make sure you're still alive. And the mini corks, and then the actual needle bars were ladies' hair clips that they used to straighten up to make the needle bars. There's 2 original Jonesies. The Jonesy roundback came from a fish and chip shop. Yes, a fish and chip shop. And he'd lent £100 from the guy and never returned it. One day he's gone down to the shop and he's took all his machines off him, and the power unit and his display books, and a couple of years later, a tattooist has gone into this fish and chip shop, and he's covered in tattoos. And he says, "You're a tattoo artist?" And he says, "Yes." He says, "I've got the new shop down the road. Well, I've got a couple of old machines here. Would you be interested?" And he says, "Well, what have you got?" And he comes out with this little plastic bag, and there's 4 Jonesies, and there's a power unit, and there's some hand-drawn flash. And he looks in there and he goes, "Oh, what do I want with that old rubbish?" And so he said, "Well, what did you pay for it?" He says, £100. He said, "I'm not giving you £100 for that." And he paid him £50 and acquired this part for the collection. And I paid a lot more money for it. And but I just love the story that it's come from a fish and chip shop. It's